All right, let's just get it out on the table. I know you're looking at the budget, you're looking at me, and you're thinking, how on earth can you possibly justify this cost? Well, today, that's exactly what I'm going to do. We're going to break down that $35,000 question piece by piece.
And look, it's a totally fair question. Why in the world does our naturally aspirated V12 cost 8 times more than a genuinely brilliant, high-tech engine from a world-class manufacturer like Toyota? I mean, they're both engineering marvels in their own right. So what are you actually buying with all that extra cash? Is it just for the badge? Let's really dig in.
When you look at it on paper, the question gets even harder to answer. The core technology, it looks basically the same. We both use direct injection, we both have variable valve timing, we're both using high-grade aluminum alloys. Heck, they're both even hand-built by experts. From this high-level view, that massive price gap, it looks almost indefensible. But the simple answers here are just plain wrong. They're misleading. If you think this is just about our V12 being bigger and needing a bit more raw material, then we're not having the right conversation. The real story is so much deeper.
Just look at this number, $968. After you account for the difference in size and weight, that is the total difference in the cost of raw aluminum between our V12 and their inline 3. $968. It's a rounding error in the total price gap. So no, the cost isn't in the raw metal.
The real cost, it's in the sacrifices. The deliberate, often painful choices we make in research and development, all for one thing: perfection. And that story starts right at the very heart of the engine, the block itself.
We use an in-house sandcasting process that, some people would call archaic, old-fashioned. We do it because it's the only way to create this incredibly complex structure with super low porosity and these thin yet massively strong walls. But here's the sacrifice. Our tolerance for error is 0. We digitally scan every single block that comes out of the mold, and if it isn't mathematically perfect, we scrap it. We throw it away. That insane scrap rate is a deliberate, very expensive choice to guarantee that any block that survives is absolutely flawless. But look, creating a perfect engine block is just the start. That's just the container. Now you have to engineer everything inside it to survive the absolutely brutal laws of physics at extreme speeds. And that's a whole other ballgame.
9,500 revolutions per minute. The Toyota Corolla is a phenomenal engine, but it redlines around 7,000 RPM. That 2,500 RPM difference isn't just a number on a spec sheet. It is a massive engineering canyon, and it has huge cost implications.
And here's why. It all comes down to a fundamental law of physics. The mechanical stress on all the moving parts inside an engine doesn't just go up in a nice, neat line as you add revs. No. It increases with the square of the engine's RPM. That one little detail, the square, changes everything.
So what does that actually mean? Well, that 36% increase in redline from 7,000 to 9,500 RPM, it results in an 84% increase in mechanical stress. The forces trying to rip our engine apart from the inside are nearly double what they are in a typical high-performance engine.
So how do you even begin to handle that kind of force? You have to rethink every single component. You have to use exotic materials and, frankly, crazy processes. The crankshaft has to be impossibly light but also unbelievably strong. The pistons, you can't cast them, they have to be forged. The connecting rods aren't steel, they're titanium, which has all the strength but at a much lower weight. Even the camshafts, we manufacture them hollow. That is a ridiculously complex and expensive thing to do, all just to reduce rotational mass.
And this is where we get to the heart of the cost. When you start adding up just the extra cost of these specific parts, the forged pistons, the titanium rods, those hollow camshafts, the motorsport-grade dry sump system, and the Formula One derived variable intake, you're already looking at $35,000 to $40,000 in additional cost. Alone, just in parts and manufacturing, that's the tangible hardware cost of perfection.
But believe it or not, even that isn't the whole story. Because all of that money, all of that insane R&D, it's not just about survival. It's about what that survival unlocks. It enables the payoff. It enables the art of what we call torque shaping.
This is our patented technology. We use all those incredibly expensive, complex systems, not just to produce raw power, but to sculpt it. We actually find tiny little peaks and valleys in the torque curve, and we intentionally smooth them out. We sacrifice a tiny bit of peak power on paper to create something far more valuable, A perfectly smooth, dramatic, ever-increasing feeling of acceleration.
See, the goal was never purely mechanical. From day one, the engineering brief was, and I'm quoting here, to create the most emotional acceleration possible. That was the mission. We wanted the car to feel like it never stops pulling harder, just this constant crescendo of drama all the way to that 9,500 RPM red line.
So here's the bottom line. We were never just chasing a horsepower number on a spec sheet. Honestly, that's the easy part. We were chasing a feeling, a specific, unparalleled sensation for the driver that you just can't measure on a dynamometer.
Our entire mission was to engineer the absolute pinnacle of combustion-induced sensations. Everything, every single costly decision, every manufacturing sacrifice was in service of that one single goal.
Which brings me to my final point, my final defense of this budget, if you will. And it all comes down to a simple, universal concept that applies to everything from sports to engineering, the law of diminishing returns.
Think about it like this. A reasonably fit person can run the 100-meter dash in 16 seconds. With dedicated training, they can get down to 13 seconds, a huge improvement. But to get from 13 seconds down to an elite 10 seconds, that last 3-second gain requires an absolutely exponential investment of resources, commitment, and talent. We are fighting in that last 3 seconds. We are not aiming for very good. We are aiming for the pinnacle, and that is brutally expensive.
So no, we didn't build a rational engine. We didn't build a practical engine. We built a masterpiece. From a purely utilitarian perspective, this engine is completely unnecessary. But that is the entire point. So I'll ask you one last time. What does the money buy? It buys this engine's very existence. It pays for the research, the exotic materials, and the sheer audacity required to create the pinnacle of naturally aspirated emotion. That is what you are investing in.